Alright, so now that we know how to divide polynomials, and now it just takes a lot of practice. As you saw in the last video, there's a lot of moving parts. We're going to convert to long division and go through that long division process. So my first one, I've got a trinomial, right, divided by x minus 3. So long division, we put our divisor there, right, and we put our numerator inside that little house, if you would. And then what starts is we talk about how many times is x going to 4x squared. And if you can't think of that in your head, just put that little work over to the side. So we're asking, 4x squared divided by x. Well, that is 4x. So I like to put the 4x there. Now that that number's there, we multiply it. So 4x times x is 4x squared. A negative 3 times 4x is a minus 12. We subtract. So when I subtract, there's a sign change. And again, I like to use a different colored pen. And I like to put things in circles so I know exactly what sign it changed to. So 4x squared, take away 4x squared, canceled out. 3x plus 12x is 15x. And then we just basically carry everything down. And we start the process over. So how many times does x go into 15x? Or written that way, right? I'm saying that. The x's divide out, and we're left with positive 15. So I'm going to put my positive 15 there, and then we multiply. 15 times x is 15x. Negative 3 and positive 15 is negative 45. Subtracting, we change my signs, and we end up with here, those cancel out. Negative 2 plus 45 gives us a positive 43. And I'm done here because number one, there's no more terms to carry down. And number two, if I try asking how many times does 43 go into x, that doesn't go in very cleanly. So there's my remainder. So how do we write our answer? We take our quotient, 4x plus 15, and we add our remainder over what my divisor was in the first place. And so there would be your final answer for number one. And hopefully after seeing this, we've done 4 long divisions, 2 of them with numbers and 2 of them with polynomials. And hopefully you're starting to see that dynamic. It's the same process over and over and over again. And yes, there's a lot to it, so please practice. Number 2, we're taking a 4-term polynomial and dividing it by a binomial. So again, we're going to set this up in long division. And everything begins by asking how many times is my first term, how many times is it going to x cubed. And to help you out, again, maybe you just write it out. So x cubed divided by x. Well, that gives us an x squared. What do we do with that x squared? We multiply it. X squared times x is x cubed. 1 times x squared is a positive x squared. Now I have to subtract. And as we've seen, what happens when I subtract, there's a sign change. So those go away. A negative 2x squared minus x squared gives us negative 3x squared. And then we just basically carry everything down. And we play the game again. So how many times does x go into negative 3x squared? Well, again, if you need to see it, write it that way. And it looks like negative 3x times. So I'll write the negative 3x there. What do I do with that negative 3x? I multiply it. So negative 3x times x is a negative 3x squared. A positive 1 times a negative 3x is a negative 3x. Changing the signs because we are now subtracting. Right, here's what we get. Negative 3x squared plus 3x squared disappears. 3x plus 3x is a 6x. And then we just carry everything down. And then we get to play it again. So how many times does x go into 6x? I'll write it that way. X's cancel out, leaving us with a positive 6. What do we do with that positive 6? We multiply it. So 6 times x is 6x, and 6 times 1 is a positive 6. Because we're subtracting, we go through a sign change. The 6x's cancel out, and a negative 4 and a negative 6 results in a negative 10. So there's my quotient, there's my remainder, and there's my divisor. So our answer is written as x squared minus 3x plus 6 plus a negative 10 all over x plus 1. And I guess I didn't need those parentheses there, but we got it. All right, so hopefully, again, that one a little bit more steps in the process, but after seeing this, it's the same process over and over and over again. So it just takes practice. So last but not least, all right, so again, I have things rearranged a little bit differently. It's not as a fraction, but here's what would be up in the numerator, and we're dividing it by what's down in the denominator. All right, so there's my divisor. So long division, we begin by putting that number, or excuse me, putting the divisor out here and putting my numerator inside the house, or whatever you call that there. And what starts this is we begin by asking myself, how many times does this first term go into that first term? And perhaps you need to see it, so I'll write it over here. So 8x cubed divided by 4x. Well, 8 into 4 is 2. X cubed divided by x is x squared. So I have a 2x squared. What do we do with that term? We multiply it. 2x squared times 4x is 8x cubed. 3 times 2x is a positive 6x squared. And so now that I've got that, right, we're now going to change the signs. Oops, that's a minus there. We're changing the signs because we're subtracting. That goes away. A negative 22x squared and minus 6x squared gives us a negative 28x squared. And then we basically just carry everything down. Do it again, right? How many times does 4x go into negative 28x squared? So perhaps I do that work off to the side to figure that out. And so 4 goes into negative 28 negative 7 times. X squared divided by x, well, that'll leave me with an x. So we have a negative 7x. What do we do with that negative 7x? We multiply it. Negative 7x times 4x is a negative 28x squared. A positive 3 and a negative 7 gives us a negative 21x. We're changing the signs because we're subtracting, and those cancel out. Negative 5x plus 21x results in a 16x, and then plus 12. And we play the game again. So how many times does 4x go into 16x? Well, the x's divide out. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So we get a plus 4. What do we do with that plus 4? We multiply it. 4 times 4x is 16x. 3 times 4 is 12. And then we're subtracting, so my signs change behind it. And something interesting happens here. Everything cancels out, and we're left with 0. So my quotient, right, if you technically want to write that, that's 0 over what I divided by. But when we divide by 0, that's 0. So the answer actually is 2x squared minus 7x plus 4. And something very interesting happened here. When you guys are in a 150 class in the future, we'll actually take a deeper look at this, because believe it or not, we've actually started to factor the polynomial. And I'm getting way ahead of myself. We're going to factor polynomials too, but that's one of the things that we use division for, is to factor polynomials. And again, we'll see a little bit of that in chapter 5 in our class, and you'll definitely see something like this in a 150 class. So that's what we're getting ourselves ready for. So hopefully that gets you ready. There's a lot of moving parts, so it takes a lot of practice. So make sure you're doing that. You're constantly just going through the game of how many times does the first term go into first term. Get it, multiply, subtract, and change the signs. And then you just keep doing it over and over and over again. So practice makes perfect. So hopefully I'll see a lot of practice on the Canvas discussion board. And we're ready for chapter 5.